Welcome to Noblesnake Reviews, where we seek the stories that make us better. Here it is less about finding what is good or bad in a movie than it is trying to find what of good or evil we may take away from it. Our goal is not just to find good films, but ennobling films. Films like, The Land Before Time. This is not just a really good film, one of director Don Bluth's best, but a very rich film, full of themes like overcoming prejudice and ill will, enduring hardships with hope, the power of friendship to overcome adversity, and above all, the power of faith. First, let's talk a bit about the story. We open as a small family group of sauropods welcomes their only surviving offspring into the world.
They called him Littlefoot.
Theirs is a world of dangerous and marvelous creatures beyond count. But it is also a dying world. The dinosaurs are dependent upon the leaf, and the leaves have begun to die. Faced with extinction, some of the dinosaur herds have begun journeying westward toward the Great Valley, a legendary place where the leaves still grow. It's a perilous journey. Littlefoot's mother is killed defending him from the terrible Sharptooth, and a great earthquake separates him from his grandparents, leaving him to make his own way to the Great Valley.
He would have to find his way, or the chain of life would be broken.
Along the way, he picks up other young dinosaurs who have been separated from their herds, including Sarah, a proud and cynical Triceratops with whom he's often at odds, Ducky, a hyperactive and optimistic Saurolophus, Petrie, an acrophobic pterosaur, and Spike, a dim-witted Stegosaurus who never speaks. Possibly he's afraid that if he does, someone will notice that he should have been extinct millions of years earlier. With Sharptooth on the prowl and the prospect of starvation staring them in the face, the little herd has nothing to depend on but Littlefoot's faith in his mother's words and their trust in each other. A few things stand out about the story. One is that, like much of Don Bluth's work, it's kind of a brutal film at times. These characters go through absolute hell on their way to paradise. The scene where Littlefoot loses his mother is one of the saddest in any animated feature, up there with Bambi.
Dear sweet Littlefoot, do you remember the way to the Great Valley?
I guess so. But why do I have to know you're gonna be with me?
I'll be with you, even if you can't see me.
Unlike Bambi, though, we don't just see her death, we see the aftermath. The next few scenes show him falling into depression and trying to deal with the fact that she's actually gone.
Not fair. She should have known better. That was Sharptooth. It's all her fault.
All whose fault?
Mother's.
Oh, I see.
This is all pretty grim, and it takes Littlefoot a while to accept his loss. But it's also very true to life. This is how kids deal with grief, sobbing, trying to find someone to blame, and trying to find any kind of loophole that might let them undo what's been done. Which brings up another point. The characters all act like real children, not like how adults would like to think children act. When Littlefoot and Sarah fight, it's every bit as brutal and mean-spirited as real fights between real kids. On the other side of things, Ducky in particular is one of the most charming and sincere kid characters since at least the golden age of Disney.
It is very special. Very. His mother gave it to him. She did.
It helps that they're all voiced by real children, with the exception of Petrie, who is voiced by Disney veteran Will Ryan.
You hungry? I empty all the way to the top. Now we at the Great Valley and still got no green foods.
Speaking of voices, that's Helen Shaver as Littlefoot's mother, and she has one of the warmest, most nurturing voices you'll ever find.
Now, you be careful, my Littlefoot.
Part of the reason her death is so heartrending is that we feel every bit of how deeply she loves her son. and how strong their connection is. She's not in the film very long, but she leaves a big impact. Then, of course, there's Sharptooth. Saints alive, this thing is scary. He's so utterly savage, seems always just a few steps behind our heroes, and almost appears indestructible. He gets repeatedly battered by Littlefoot's mother, smashes headfirst into rocks, then falls into a ravine, and later gets up like it was nothing. He's basically the dinosaur version of Jason Voorhees, only less emotionally stable. Of course, that's probably how any animal would see an alpha predator, as an implacable engine of destruction. Which brings us to one of the more interesting aspects of the film, its status as xenofiction. For those who don't know, xenofiction is fiction told from a non-human point of view, the best and most famous example being Watership Down. Other examples would include Bambi, Kipling's Jungle Book, and just about anything written by a politician or a tenured professor. The Land Before Time is also in that tradition. In particular, the dinosaurs' practice of calling things, including each other, by simple descriptive terms like long neck, three-horn, green food, and so on, lends them a slightly inhuman feel. The way the different herds hold themselves aloof from one another is incredibly animalistic behavior, as is Littlefoot's forming an impromptu mixed herd with his friends. As they are all herd animals, they would naturally associate being in a group with safety. So, when isolated from their own kind, their instinct would be to join up with one another. This non-human element also comes across in the animation, which is fantastic. The characters, with the exceptions of the bipedal Ducky and Petrie, never assume human poses, but always act like, well, animals. Look at how Littlefoot greets Sarah here. It's very dog-like. I also love the great sense of scale they create with the adult dinosaurs. These creatures all feel huge, especially the sauropods. There's a scene where Littlefoot and his mother are talking, and she turns to look at him, but she's so big it takes her a good few seconds to bring her head around to face him. Note also how the adult sauropods sleep standing up and leaning against whatever's handy, which makes it all the more painful when we later see Littlefoot's mother collapse on the ground. Now, one could say that the young dinosaurs all appear too small compared to the adults, though, to be fair, they are all supposed to be recently hatched. Besides which, thematically, it helps to reinforce how helpless and weak they are compared to the world of dangers they inhabit. Now, why Littlefoot, who needs to put on about 30 tons before he grows up, hasn't gained a pound in 15 films is a rather more concerning question, but we're not talking about that today. Instead, let's talk about the ideas of the film, and there are some big ideas. In some ways, this is almost like a version of Pilgrim's Progress for kids. I'm sure Bunyan would have used dinosaurs if he could. Can't you picture Big Pope as a T-Rex? That would have been awesome. The central question to the film is, 1, whether the Great Valley even exists, and 2, whether they're going the right way. Littlefoot's mother firmly believes it does, and passes that faith on to her son, who believes it because he loves and trusts her. She's never seen it, of course, faith being the substance of things to be hoped for, the evidence of things that appear not. Or, as she puts it,
Some things you see with your eyes. Others you see with your heart.
the substance of the faith she passes on to Littlefoot is that the Great Valley exists, and there's only one sure path to get there. Both of these are challenged by Sarah, who, in the first place, doubts whether there even is a Great Valley, and really only wants to find her parents, and in the second place, doubts that Littlefoot's often difficult road is really the only way to get there, arguing for what seems to be an easier path.
I'm taking the easy way for one.
The thing that Sarah fails to understand is that the Great Valley is their only hope of survival. The world is dying, and they could never remain there. Call it the biome of destruction, to keep with the Bunyan theme. Not only that, but she clearly doesn't comprehend what is meant by the Great Valley, as shown by her eagerness to identify the first patch of green they find as their destination.
Look! Green food! The Great Valley! I found it! Stop it! I found it!
Vanity Grove here gets stripped almost bare before they arrive, furthering the idea that even though there are still patches of green in the world, they're a temporary comfort at best. Sarah, therefore, could be said to represent the skeptic. She doubts that the Great Valley even exists, and especially that Littlefoot actually knows the only way to get there. She's more preoccupied with immediate, temporary comfort and security than with permanent things, and is proud of her supposed independence.
I'm not afraid to be alone.
She's also pretty much a complete brat, but I wouldn't call that a defining feature of non-believers in general. All that being said, she's not always wrong, and Littlefoot isn't always right. In particular, she knows what she's talking about when she warns them that Sharptooth is still alive. Littlefoot doesn't believe her, partly because she tells it in such a self-aggrandizing way, and partly because, again, he fell into a canyon during an earthquake. There's no reason this thing should be alive.
Why won't you die?
Not only that, but Littlefoot also makes the mistake of promising too much when trying to encourage his friends through a difficult patch.
You can't quit now. What if the Great Valley's just over the top of these rocks?
Which ends up destroying rather than building their hope when he's proven wrong yet again.
This is your Great Valley?
Faith, therefore, isn't an infallible guide, nor does it confer any defense against being wrong. There are times when the believer would do well to listen to the skeptic. At the same time, though, Littlefoot's faith is their only hope. They have to reach the Great Valley or they'll die, and he's the only one who knows the way. When Sarah tries to lead them along her easier path, it turns out to lead straight into a hellish volcanic landscape that nearly costs all of them their lives. Easy and broad is the way that leads to destruction.
Sarah was still too proud to admit that she'd gone the wrong way.
Though it must be said, for all her brattiness and bad attitude, Sarah isn't the enemy. On the contrary, she's a friend, as much a part of their makeshift herd as anyone. Doubt is not the enemy of faith, but its check and foil. Besides which, you can't really be too picky about who you spend the apocalypse with. No, the enemy is the great, implacable malevolence that prowls about like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Whatever else the dinosaurs do, they must avoid Sharptooth and flee whenever they meet. Until, that is, they find him standing right across their path, and Littlefoot decides they can go no further without confronting him face to face. If Sharptooth is the devil, it's interesting how Sarah reacts to him. On the one hand, she justly fears him as much as any of them. On the other, whenever he's not actually before her eyes, she proudly declares that he doesn't scare her at all.
What did you do? Huh? I walked right up to him. I looked him straight in the eye.
Even when she knows he's out there, she still chooses to sleep in an exposed position, while Littlefoot opts for a more sheltered one. Thus, even when she has greater knowledge of danger than Littlefoot, her pride makes her less able to deal with it.
This way. Come back! You're going the wrong way!
Of course, she should be fine as long as she doesn't do anything really stupid, like taunt the apparently dead T-Rex or, oh, too late. This brings us to another major theme, friendship and love. The first thing Littlefoot encounters in this world is the love of his family, which guarded him against the innumerable dangers around him, and which Sharptooth destroyed by killing his mother. It was the love he shared with his mother that gave him the faith that is the only hope of survival. And ultimately, it's the love that the five friends bear one another that gives them the courage to face Sharptooth. Each of them puts himself or herself on the line, laying down his life for the others. Each here includes Sarah, whose love and loyalty for her friends finally overcomes her pride and brings her back at the last minute, proving the deciding factor in the battle. Thus they defeat Sharptooth at last by dropping him into the middle of a lake. Like I said, Dinosaur Jason Voorhees. I suppose that would make Littlefoot the dinosaur Tommy Jarvis, and I don't think this analogy can go much further. Then comes the final reversal. Alone and drained after the battle, Littlefoot has a vision of his mother where he admits he can't make it to the Great Valley.
I tried to do what you told me, but it's just too hard.
Then the clouds part, and Littlefoot discovers that, against all odds, his faith and the love of his friends has brought them there at last.
We did it! We did it together!
They're all reunited with their families in paradise, where they live happily ever after together. At least until, well, you know. Thus is The Land Before Time, a really wonderful film. Is it perfect? Not at all. The editing is a bit of a mess, especially toward the end, and yeah, Sarah is just shy of unbearable at times. But the gorgeous animation, strong story, and rich themes make this indubitably an example of a truly ennobling film. Tune in next time for a film not about dinosaurs, but Welshmen. No, I don't know what the connection is either.